Welcome everybody. Here are a couple of topics that I'd like to dive into regarding NIO today. So first off, we have obviously the great news around monthly delivery figures, which I think are beyond expectations. To be honest, as I said in my last videos about the monthly chart, the trend is up in the right direction, but I don't count each and every month to be a new record. And again, we did get a record month, so that's a surprise to me, to be honest. Great to see and to have. So I think this can help to establish confidence again for investors, because we are now getting in a sort of under-promising, over-delivering, which is the exact opposite of what we've been through last year. And maybe there's some lesson learned, or they're simply getting operationally much better. I'm not sure yet about the whole background to this, what's causing this sudden overperformance currently. But obviously you might now wonder why NIO stock is not up, let's say 10% or something. It looked very great in the pre-market, right? And I would say, I'll comment that one on Twitter as well, that it's kind of a programmed fade here today, in a sense that you don't see a lot of traction yet. I spoke in some Patreon-only videos in the last couple of days for reasons about why Chinese stocks are currently underperforming, and I listed here a couple of reasons of different things to wait for, which could happen in the next couple of days, or some might even take some weeks. I won't dive in each of them during this video because it's going to be a shorter one. But we will get the China PMI numbers. We'll get more economic data from the US. Maybe some of that will confirm some sort of weakness in the US economy. So far, that hasn't been the case, right? That's why everybody is plowing into US large caps, cash-rich companies, profitable companies. And then we have Powell speaking, making possibly some statements that might be dovish. We might see a Bank of Japan intervention on the weak yuan and maybe reversing the carry trade. We'll see. We've got the third plenum coming up in China, an important economic meeting which will lay out the future of China's economic growth. And we might see some leaks in anticipation, but also finally the outcomes by the middle of the month. And then all of that could play into a breakdown of the US dollar strength. Currently, it's in an uptrend. It's going higher and higher. It's becoming stronger and stronger, but it's at a crucial stage. We'll see how all of that plays out. So until then, maybe until the macros align, well, we might not see the fundamental catch-up, or the catch-up of the stock to these new fundamentals in terms of delivery numbers and so on. But once those things are out of the way, it might turn very quickly. Or on the other hand, if those indicators don't come in as we need them, then obviously we might stay in this misery for some more prolonged time. Quick catch up to my video yesterday about the CFO. Today in my Patreon community, the source of this rumor actually confirmed again with his sources and also said it's kind of a done deal. In my opinion, that would be a catalyst to the stock. I think that's going to be good news, as I laid out in my video yesterday. And now finally to the main topic of this video, about some news regarding the Firefly rollout, which will include a new battery swap network. And in my opinion, the comments that I see out there by investors are going into the wrong direction. Let me explain. So here's the Twitter account by NIO Nordics. I'm following this account. I think there are quite a few fake bulls out there, not a lot of informative NIO accounts, but this is an exception. NIO Nordics, I think, is an account worth following. And he wrote a post today, which I think gets very to the depth of it. So I can't add much more to the post itself. All of this information, I think, is quite worth discussing. He's saying here that the fact that NIO Firefly might be used separate swap stations might have to do something with CATL. But coming to that in a second, the reactions that I get, by the way, also my Patreon community, but also lots of other investors on the YouTube comments on Twitter and so on, are really worried about this and say, well, that's a strategic problem here. If we get more capital expenditure for a separate network, wouldn't it make much more sense if NIO were using or letting Firefly swap also at existing swap stations? And well, first off, I want to comment on this, what it might have to do with CATL, which I think is worth discussing. But second of all, my main point here that I want to make is that this type of investor thinking is somehow rooted in an old narrative, which is that battery swap stations are just loss-making and are not worthwhile building and are actually a problem for NIO. As I said in some of my initial videos going into 2024, I think this year the narrative will switch, and I think we will see that the re-emergence of the topic, or the first emergence actually of the topic of battery swap stations, are becoming profit centers. First of all, we'll see the Onvo brand launch and much more utilization at current swap stations, as well as obviously other ways monetizing swap stations through partnerships, as well as through grid balancing. So there's more to that. There's also a plan for the swap station build out for the current battery swap network and so on. And now we also get the news that there will be a second battery swap station network for Firefly and possibly multi-brand and smaller cars. Now NIO Nordics here is kind of saying that his speculation is that NIO and CATL will partner up for the Firefly swap network, catering also the highly successful micro EV and compact EV segment in China, where brands such as Wuling and BYD currently dominate. CATL has their own swapping standard called EVgo or EVoGo since 2022, with the value proposition being fast and modular battery swapping. The CATL design is called CHOC SEB and allows for swapping of batteries which have 1, 2, or 3 modules. 1 or 2 CHOC SEB modules is perfect for the micro EVs, compact EVs, while 3 modules will cater for the more long-range user scenarios. Now, all of that is stated here is true. So there is a CATL battery swapping network with their own swap stations. They have their own technology, this chock bars, so basically different module sizes of the batteries. And yes, it hasn't gone very far. There is almost no news about the build out of CATL. Some recent news of that they are partnering with Bike, I think, but other than that, not much, right? And I think that's a very good observation here by NIO Nordics, that this might have something to do with NIO as well, because NIO has always been sitting at the table with the large industry players in China to create the battery swap standards. And yes, it might be that the CATL standard is actually serving different types of cars than what NIO is going to serve with the NIO brand, right? Not the NIO as a company. And so I think it might make sense on a technical level to have also this modularity, which, by the way, I made videos about in the past, that NIO has exactly shown in patents that they will have battery swap stations that are interoperable with different charging standards and charging speeds and architectures, such as 400 volt, 800 volt architecture. And it was also hinting different modules for battery swapping. And we don't see that with the current battery swap stations, right? And not with Alps or the Onvo brand either. That's going to use pretty much the same battery pack sizes as the current swap network. So yes, there seems to be something missing here. And that's exactly what NIO Nordics is pointing here, right? That possibly Firefly might have this modularization, those different chock bars that can be either a big pack with 3 modules maybe, or 2 modules, who knows, giving larger range, or just a very small one, because obviously the battery is the most important and most costly part of an EV nowadays. And so it's interesting that CATL has done that, but not so far, went into scaling this up or building many of those swap stations, while those swap stations look strikingly similar also to some of those older NIO swap stations. So it's interesting as a speculation, and I'm not saying that there's 100% proof that there will be something between NIO and CATL, but there are good points in here in this commentary as well that NIO's battery asset management company, which is this external company which has all of the NIO batteries at its balance sheet, is invested by CATL. So that's a huge stakeholder already. And at the same time, CATL is the largest cell provider for NIO. So why should they compete too much against each other? Obviously, everybody could, of course, do its own thing. CATL doesn't really care about NIO in terms of size. They have more bigger clients, that's for sure. And they could just be interested in venturing into battery swapping, that's for sure. But there is also no need for CATL to really bring down NIO and destroy them in terms of becoming a competitor to battery swapping if they're invested in the battery asset management company, right? Because the incentives are aligned for them to have as much profits as possible through battery swapping by NIO in the battery asset management company, because then they will profit with their CATL investment. And now, if they bring out this battery swapping network, they could definitely share it with a company like NIO Firefly or a brand like NIO Firefly, if it's not only going to be NIO, but maybe also different partners. And I know that one of the testers of battery swapping in China, in Hefei, of the CATL battery swapping is Volkswagen. So here we have it, one of the big Western players who might have an interest in a mass market brand that is able to swap in China. Maybe they want to do it with CATL, but maybe they would be open to develop this on a platform that is the same battery swap standard and platform as also Firefly and CATL might be using. Who knows? I think the Chinese are smart enough to think very, very long term, and for them, battery swapping will become an industry standard, right? It's their way of really venturing into the global market and distribute standards similarly how they have done with 5G and other stuff in various industries, but certainly to kind of have the top hand or the hand on what's happening in China. And in China, we certainly going to have those battery swap initiatives. So thinking that from the big picture here, I think there is lots of merit to this idea of this post by NIO Nordics, while this is not a confirmation, but I think it's worth thinking about. And to wrap things up again, we want NIO and its partners and CATL to build as many battery swap stations as possible. Doesn't matter whether or not this all will be going to be owned by NIO or not. This means a huge shift in the industry and a huge confirmation of the business idea, right? So whether or not CATL will do it on its own and NIO will have a different network for Firefly, and that one will be shared with multiple brands, right, in their partnerships, NIO will make money through that, either through patents, royalties, through development, R&D for these platforms, through selling cars. And those swap stations might look very, very different. They might be tinier, they might be more flexible. And most importantly, they will be able to balance the grid and have multiple revenue streams and opportunities. So coming back again, the problem is that investors still worry about the capital expenditure of these swap stations. But once this whole industry shifts to that and the consumer jumps on top of it, and those multiple revenue streams in terms of partnerships, grid balancing, energy arbitrage trading, build out, and so on, the service fees along with that, and the whole ecosystem with recyclable batteries, switching batteries, upgradable, everything. Once all of that is up and running, this will be profit centers. So don't worry about whether or not that's going to be a second network or not. My speculation is that at least NIO will not be the only company funding those swap stations for Firefly. It sounds a lot to me like they will be to the benefit of multiple brands. And I could assume or imagine that CATL will have a major role and stake in that, and that we will see that this will be sort of a more flexible modularization type of swapping mechanism. That's all I know for now. It's a bit speculative, but I don't agree with those comments out there who are worried about the CAPEX of that. That's short-term thinking. It seems like this is feasible, I should say, and not overdone in terms of what they are looking for. And so I'm excited about that because, the worst case scenario for us would be if nobody jumps on that train, if nobody would invest in that, and if nobody would see that there is a business case. And people wouldn't start building that if they wouldn't see a business case in that. That's my point of view. I would hope that NIO goes out more often this year and, like they've done in the current earnings calls, talks more about profitability of battery swapping, because again, my assumption here that in this year we will see the change of narrative that battery swap stations will become profit centers that we want to have more of, not less of. Okay, that's my opinion. Thanks for watching. See you in the next videos.